Welcome to Stormwatch by Grey Noise Intelligence. Each week, we drop the latest info on what's happening at Grey Noise and Census, take a look at a roundup of important and timely cybersecurity topics, toss out some expert opinions, and drop the occasional conspiracy theory. The entire gang is here this time, and together we'll try to make some sense of the ongoing saga of the Change healthcare breach. It has wrought much havoc with some of the latest developments almost causing Glenn to turn to the Incredible Hulk. We'll also take a look at a new initiative to help open source projects maintain safety and resilience, and cover our usual tags and Kev roundups. But it's good to have the whole gang back together. I just want to start. It's great. It's great having Hemija. I'm glad you could be here this time. You're a much deserved vacation last week, from what I understand.
It was awesome. Very much
Did you
needed.
have any near death experiences
No,
this
no
time?
further details.
Oh, not even near death experience details, or
No, no near-death experiences. I did go on the water again. I went on like an architecture cruise, so I faced my fears.
wow, that's pretty cool. So we do have to start with Glenn, so he doesn't steal anyone else's answer this time. But we do have an intro question today. So Glenn, I also understand that you are no longer melting.
Yes, after 31 long days, I now have central AC back. It is glorious. I would like to thank the inventor of the air conditioner, which is actually going to lead into your opening question.
Oh, so for everyone listening, the question for my co-hosts today are: if your life had a soundtrack, what would be the title of the current chapter's theme song?
So I was thinking there has to be some kind of ode to the inventor of air conditioning because it's just amazing. And that set me on a little bit of a boondoggle to figure out who invented AC and why. And it's Willis Carrier, which makes sense because there's a Carrier brand. And Willis invented AC because he had like a paper plant or some kind of paper printing plant. And the humidity in Brooklyn was messing with the prints and the colors and making the papers shrink. So it started because he was just trying to solve his shrinking paper problem.
So it had nothing to do with making the employees more comfortable, having a better workplace for humans.
Don't be
it was
ridiculous.
It was all about the paper.
Yeah, it's all about the money. But anyway, so there should be an ode to Willis Carrier.
I think that's actually pretty fitting. I really do, because you've been suffering for a very, very long time.
Yeah, there's portable ACs. It was okay. It was tolerable until the last week, which is when in Texas the temperatures broke 100, and then we found the limits of the portable ACs, and then it was pretty miserable last week. But we lived. We're stronger for it. More grateful.
And you are here. This is cool.
I'm here.
Thank you for being here today. And the same question for you: if your life had a soundtrack, what would the title be right now?
This one was tough. But I'm glad that Glenn talked about AC because mine is also related to critical infrastructure, which is I had to riff on an existing one because I'm not creative enough this early in the morning. But mine would be bridge over troubled Wi-Fi connections because I think I'm just cursed. No matter where I am, give me the strongest Wi-Fi. I'll figure out a way for it to fail on me.
You're just like a human interference.
Yeah.
Are you a robot?
That's kind of like Glenn's whole thing with like Zoom and things because like he and Zoom just do not work anymore.
Can you pass the CAPTCHA?
We should start the next Stormwatch with that.
Yeah, maybe. Let's do it.
Show me the dots I have to press.
Zoom on Wi-Fi. We'll never get online. And if I'm ever on a Zoom with Andrew Morris, 100% chance that my Zoom will break. 100% every time.
Cool, I guess. Anyway, Emily, same for you. If your life had a soundtrack, what would be the title of the current chapter's theme song?
This was really difficult, but I just made something up because I didn't know a real song was an option.
You don't have to. Again, it didn't have to be.
I feel lied to. I feel misled.
Well, wait. No, nobody asked me clarifying. You are all able to ask clarifying questions. You know that.
This is a democracy?
It didn't read like there was an open for questions. So my response to this is return to the weeds. I don't know what kind of thing it would be. All I know is that I would probably hope that Hans Zimmer had scored it.
Ooh, that'd be cool.
That's all I got.
That'd be good.
like the Dark Knight Gardener or something like that, right? Or...
Sure, something like
Okay,
that.
okay.
Maybe mixed with a little Interstellar and like, oh man, what was that old firefighting movie that he
Flashback?
Backdraft or something?
Backdraft, yeah.
Yeah, a little of those things sprinkled in. Yeah.
No Titanic?
James Horner.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
A good suggestion, but no.
Sorry. So mine
Speaking
is
of hearts that will go on, what is yours, Bob?
Well, hold on. So I have mine's in the background.
This is gonna be so weird.
You said we would all know it.
Nope, nothing.
Does it have words?
No, it's karaoke, Glenn. Karaoke music.
You
It literally
provide the
doesn't have
words.
words. So, anyone watch Spider-Man 2? The movie Spider-Man 2?
Not recently.
This is a podcast. We have to actually say things, not just.
We're all too scared to speak.
So yeah, it's from one of the songs on the soundtrack. So it's not the soundtrack for Spider-Man 2. It's the soundtrack that was inspired by people wrote stuff inspired by the movie Spider-Man 2. So Dashboard Confessional is the name of the band.
Just tell us what it is.
What year is it?
Wow. Whenever Spider-Man 2 came up. Frank, help me out, Frank. Come on, Frank. You help, because I thought Frank would know, because Frank always knows. It's a song by Dashboard Confessional. It's called Vindicated. I won't go into the whys, but it would definitely fit life right now.
Oh, Bob's being emo.
Wow.
Deep question.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like I'm gonna be, I'm asking you guys to bare your souls with these questions. So I'm.
What is Bob vindicated of? What's going on in his life?
It's the whole song. It's the entire song. And actually, I think
homework.
And to be honest, the music inspired by the Spider-Man 2 movie, the artist that I'll put together that compilation album, it's an actual really great album. Like, because the movie was actually a really great movie too. So you guys should watch that.
What if I told you I've never watched Spider-Man? Would I get fired?
I'd believe you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very believable.
Yeah.
Very believable. One movie that nobody should watch though is Atlas. It's on Netflix right now.
I saw your rant online about this.
Do not watch this movie. Anyone, do not. We won't go into it any more than that. I would just say, do not watch this movie.
I didn't even know what it was, but I was like, well, Bob does not like this.
It did not unseat Remo Williams' The Adventure Begins as the worst movie ever made, but it came close. It came very, very close. Oh yeah, that's right. I just pulled a Glenn. I just pulled a Glenn. I cannot believe that. Overwatch, I'm dead. I'm so dead now. Overwatch, what is yours? Sorry. Edge of Sanity. Oh yeah. For me, it's related to both the chaos in the world and personal exhaustion. Excited for our break next week. Yes, we have a break next week. We're not doing a pod next week. Bye everybody. I'm sorry, you're gonna miss us. You'll have to play through our back catalog. We actually have a back catalog. It's very extensive.
2 weeks?
Well, yeah. Well, and I was gonna say, I believe we also have decided that we're gonna need a break coming back from the break. Yeah. So it's 2 weeks. You will have to deal with no Stormwatch for a couple of weeks. Sorry, everybody.
You can keep it on your calendar, though. I know some people are like, "I love this because it keeps me out of meetings." So just keep it on your calendar. That's fine.
mean, we could you never know. The AI might take over, and we may have it do.
Actually, I hope it does because that was the best episode we've ever had.
Wow.
Wow, that's wow.
Okay.
Whoa.
I include myself in that.
I've ticked off the Overwatch. Glenn has ticked off all the other co-hosts. Glenn, we should leave and just let them do the rest of the show. I think that.
we were really
ranty
have to
wind Glenn up about the thing.
We do have to wind. Yes, we do have to wind Glenn up. All right, so I'm at this stage. Everybody, mash the like and subscribe. Do all the things. Especially since it will make the Overwatch happy, and wow, I gotta do something.
She's really upset now.
I feel really bad right now. However, we are going to get started, but something happened right before we started the show today. There's some breaking news, and it's actually, I guess, not really breaking. So
should it be called broken news?
I do think maybe this is more broken news. So on the 19th, Juniper Networks did something really dumb. At least that's my opinion of it. They released an update, and I think it's 227. Am I right about that, Glenn? And everybody, it was 220. I think it's
225, I
227.
think.
225
Close enough.
CVEs patched in one drop. Like 2 days was that, and like the 19th was Thursday last week, I think.
Oh, I didn't realize this was from last week. I thought it
It
was
was,
from
yeah.
yesterday.
The I looked at the advisory date. It was on the 19th, but we, as I think Remy's has prairie dog duties, like scout duties on the team today, and he picked it up today and dropped it, and like eyes bugged out and everything because this could have been pretty bad. For people that are, if you can grab the show notes in the PDF because you can see what's on the screen right now. We're actually not going to have screen much anymore than this today, but there's a fairly wide distribution of CVSS scores ranging from like above 2 to like 10, almost 10. A good chunk of them are 8 and above, which isn't great. And they go all the way from 2007, which was like a path traversal vulnerability and something, all the way to this year, with the massive bulk of them being in 2023. And there's a couple like the ones that are remote and high, like 9.8 or 8.3. They're kind of dumb. I don't think we're gonna see anything from them, at least not in the short term. And the one thing that I just want to throw out before we do the discussion on this one is I did a grep for Linux kernel in the descriptions of all the CVEs. Like 129 of them are part of basically what the Linux kernel folks have been doing. Like they're their own CNA now because the CV board was stupid enough to like have them be their own CNA. And they just spammed like every enterprise with this drop that owns Juniper stuff. So, I mean, before I talk anymore, I'm looking for reactions from everybody on this one.
That's a lot of CVEs.
You know how like when you get a really, really big PR to review and you're like, why isn't this in like chunks of smaller things? Like that's how I felt when I was looking at this. I was like, this is just a lot to digest all at once. What am I supposed to do with this?
What was I haven't looked close enough yet because I just saw it this morning, but what was the 2007? Like why are we talking about this nearly 20 years later? What was that vuln? Do you know? Does anyone know offhand?
It was directory traversal.
Yeah. As I said when I was introducing the topic, Glenn, it was a direct reversal vulnerability.
I totally agree. And the fact that that's the first one actually at the top. What's also funny to me is that there's a part 1 and a part 2, albeit not super clearly like marked, but there's a part 1 and a part 2. No explanation of what they mean. I feel
Well, they're
like it
following.
may have been
I think they're following Shakespeare's lead. It's kind of like
Oh,
Shakespeare.
Act 1.
Act 1,
Yeah.
Act 2.
Yeah.
I think it would have made sense maybe to like sort by CVSS.
Yeah, that was what I was gonna say.
setting.
Was I don't think it's an accident that they don't put like the highs, the criticals at the top because they're like, oh, this is so long. People just glance and.
Remediation
But do
through
you want people to patch
obfuscation.
or not? Like, what do you pick a thing?
Perplexing.
Emily has a pondering face. I'm
Yeah,
just waiting
yeah,
on the
so,
word.
like,
Right,
yeah,
I was looking at the end and it was like, there's no workaround for this issue. But then they have released a software update. So I was like processing that as
Yeah,
I was
it's
reading it in real time. Sorry.
yeah. I mean, so I guess for me there's a couple of things. One, I don't know if everyone's following the saga of Hewlett Packard buying Juniper, but Hewlett Packard is attempting to acquire Juniper. It's going through the EU process right now, which and the EU can screw up anything, so they'll probably screw this up too. But I mean, but them buying Juniper just means Juniper is going to get worse, right? So that's not great moving forward if we let that happen. So maybe this was a cleanup stuff, so the EU would be happy and they'll let them have the merger for this particular thing.
Like it was founder in M&A or something. You're
Yeah,
saying, or
or is it something like they just kind of forgot to patch stuff last year and they just jumped it all into one to make up for
Last
lost
year
time?
or like from
17
10
years ago.
years ago. Yeah, like
But
what?
like but like the bulk of the bulk are in 2023, so I'm giving a little bit of whatever. And if you read through the whole thing, like we just looked at this stuff this morning, so obviously none of us read through every single thing. But when I scanned through all the things, these were like all the garbage Linux stuff that the Linux people have patched and created CVs for that they never should have created CVs for, and like a good chunk of them anyway. And most of them can't be triggered by anything. So, which kind of makes it not a vulnerability, but whatever. So, like, at least in terms of like this particular thing. So to me, like, and I think I mentioned this to, I think like on our pre-show quickly, if I was at an enterprise again and we ran Juniper stuff, you're going to run a lot of it, and you had to have read this. So you had to go through each and every one of these CVEs on the 19th or whenever you have your process for those things. Say don't care, don't care, don't care, don't like, or yes, patch whatever, or just patch the whole thing blindly and pray that nothing breaks, because this is a lot of code changes for them to do this. Now, it may have just been that they upgraded the Linux kernel, which may have been what the whole patch was, like like an updated Linux
Probably.
kernel. But it's still, this is like a massive change, and I can't believe we haven't heard more outcry. Like, I can't believe the register hasn't done a piece on this, like yelling at the boffins and like whatever land to do this thing.
This kind of reminds me of in a previous role with a lot of customer facing clients, how surprised I was that a lot of organizations, IT people, whatever, don't see they look at an appliance as this metal box and don't connect the dots that this is a Linux OS at the base. Like they disconnect the like Linux vulnerabilities from what this appliance is running, and this is kind of another strong reminder of those appliances all still have a base OS. Yes, they're usually hardened in theory, fingers crossed, uh, and made for efficiencies, either for processing power or whatever, which is why a lot of times you can't run agents, and that's a whole nother topic. But it's still a Linux box at the end, at the bottom, that has the Linux vulns. So I need to go look at what that 2007 one is, because I'm really distracted by that.
I mean, it is just a garbage path reversal vulnerability. That's the,
But I mean, so that's a long time though. So why now? Why at all? Why not earlier? Like, I just have a lot of questions. Or is it just literally maybe that OS was hardened and so it didn't need to be fixed? Maybe it was mitigated, and this is just a official fix. I don't know. There's a lot of different paths, but
we're just stunned with this one. We all are just really stunned on this one. I mean, it is also possible that Juniper hired somebody competent. I mean, that's miracles happen. So
and we are spicy today.
My hunch actually is that I feel like this was just, to your point, Bob, just like a bunch of changes that they wanted to make to rework it, and then in the process they were like, oh, let's figure out like what this fixes, from the past, and tag all of them. But I can't imagine someone setting out and going like, okay, what are all the CVEs? Let us go one by one.
They're just trying to blend in with all the other stuff going on right now. And they're like, we'll just push this change. No one will notice.
it is crazy. And we didn't actually come today to talk about that. So we will close this segment. If anyone from Juniper is still listening, if you were listening and you still are listening despite whatever I said, if you want to ask your mates what the heck was going on and have them come on to explain themselves, that we'd be glad to do that. We're not very hostile like when you're actually here. So never know. And we will close it with, because we have to do that. So we're not doing slides for the next segment, just because it's there's just, it doesn't lend itself to slides, and it's also something where we kind of just want to put a quarter in Glenn and let him loose on this one. So for folks that may not remember or aren't paying attention to real news, not even IT news or cybersecurity news, the Change healthcare breach, which happened, which is the United Healthcare breach. Let's be clear about this. Like, they own Change, so it is United Healthcare. They're the ultimate responsibility for this one. Gigantic, multi-billion-dollar organization. They had a breach back in February of this year, and it's just been an ongoing saga of, did they pay the ransom? Did they not pay the, or was it a ransom? Yes. Did they or did they not pay the ransom? Think so, maybe, could be. The latest developments are not great, and we'll talk about that for a second. We'll save that for Glenn. The couple things that I just want to re-mention, because we have mentioned this on occasion, it continues to have a downstream negative impact on healthcare in the United States. There's a number of healthcare facilities across the United States, down to individual doctors and practitioners, who don't get any money for services that they make, because that would come from the Change Healthcare division of United Healthcare, and they don't have the ability to send money to them. And just last week, the federal government, which had put in a stopgap measure to help fund some of these folks and their organizations, Congress said, "Screw it," because that's what our Congress does these days, and, like, they're no longer doing that. So it's very possible that people are going to, like, start getting very sick and die in the US because this is still going on. And they released some information last week about when they're going to start notifying people that are affected by it, and a couple more information about their breach response. And Glenn would and I think Hemingway has some statements she'd like to make as well too. So I'm gonna start with Glenn though, because Glenn hulked out the other day when we just saw this story, and I just needed to wind him up and let him go on this one because I can't wait to hear this rant.
Well, my first problem is the fact that you think my thoughts are only worth a quarter. So we need to
We
talk about
each come
that,
with a
right?
quarter.
Oh, oh, 75 cents. All right. I guess that's still better.
Mine's a Canadian quarter.
Oh, 78 cents. I don't know. Anyway, right? No, where's the opposite? Oh, it's the opposite.
Glenn, focus, be angry.
Okay.
All caps. Go.
Yeah. Okay. So what kind of set me off last week was their notification on the website, HIPAA, blah blah blah, that was just so woe is me, really, which is not really unusual for some breach notifications. But like I kind of made some notes, and I'm just kind of point out some things on this timeline of events of how this has gone down. So it was early February that, or well, prior to February, United Healthcare, which is a massive organization, so therefore Change Healthcare, had a Citrix server on the public internet. Like red flag one, like Citrix server, public internet. That is already, we covered this with every Citrix phone. There's Citrix phones last week or 2 weeks ago. Like that's just a thing that you don't do in any uh, organization that has any kind of concern about their security posture. So they had Citrix on the public internet. Then um, they had some outages. They detected that there was some activity on February 21st. So at this point, there was already 9 days between the time that the activity started and the time that it was detected. That's a long time. Again, is that a long time for like a dentist's office or for your local chain of, whatever, like a small organization? No, 9 days I don't want to say okay, but like more understandable dwell time. But we're talking like multi-billion dollar companies with multi-billion dollars of assets and resources took 9 days to find that someone had used leaked credentials to log into their public Citrix server. So that already is a bunch more red flags. We have that implies that there was no multi-factor authentication being used or any sort of network segmentation, VPN, whatever, on this server. So like this already is piling up to be multiple missteps of decisions that led to this. So hack for 9 days before noticing no multi-factor authentication. It shut down operations fully for about a month. Then after about another month, it was kind of half in, half out. They were bringing things back up. So that brings us into February, March, into April. And now so that's April into May. And they did admit to paying a $22 million ransom. And on April 22nd, they admitted to paying the ransom. They've since had to testify against to Congress about this, of course. Last week, they said they'd start notifying patients yesterday, or victims, essentially. And when I say victims is a third of the United States. So Change Healthcare is a thing that I never heard of. I'm assuming most people haven't, but maybe you have. But like I didn't know what Change Healthcare was. So when the headlines start for this, it's like Change Healthcare ransomware attack. I'm like, oh, that sucks. It's assuming it's a local, like a community hospital or a something that's more regional in nature. No, this is a third of all Americans' claims go through this. And this led to, Bob, I think you had mentioned it once one of our shows where you had a neighbor who was saying like, yeah, I can't pick up my prescription because I need to pay cash because they can't process the payment. I was at the pharmacy listening to someone like the pharmacist or the person at the cash register trying to explain to a very elderly lady who obviously I mean, just generally speaking, doesn't understand how any of this works. And they're telling her like, "Oh no, you need to pay $600." And she's like, "It's normally 30." I'm like, well, she didn't understand because there was a ransomware attack on the client. Like she just needs her medicine. So
Do
like
you do you do you, nor- do you normally hang around in the front of CVS's just listening to customer conversations? I'm just curious. Is that a thing?
it's not a thing. I was there for my prescriptions. It's my never mind. I won't go there. So yeah, so like this has affected people's actual health, their wallets. They had to prepay to get things, and then it goes even further where the doctors, healthcare providers, especially smaller ones, kind of like you were saying, Bob, were not getting their money because this change organization processes claims. So now we have people going out in medicine, people spending more money than they need to, hopefully temporarily, but who knows how long that takes. Medical providers not being able to provide access because they're not getting paid. It also highlighted like how many, because in America, like we know, like our healthcare system is totally FUBAR. We know how expensive it is, how hard it is to get healthcare and all this. But in my mind, I never thought about like how many of these providers are operating their business check to check. That just seemed not how it was in my head, but we have since learned how many are operating check to check just because of how the claims are processed and delays and stuff, including like where I go for PT the last several months. We were having a conversation and he randomly started asking me about it. And I was like, that's weird. Why are you asking? And he's like, because I haven't got paid for 3 months. Like we haven't got our claims for 3 months. And so we're really starting to feel, a big pinch. And so it's just really absurd to me that all of this is, so now the disruption at the peak was about $100 million a day in claims being impacted, touches a third of Americans. It's still not over. It's still like there's still issues being ironed out. It's not fully recovered. We're pushing $1 billion in cost for this incident so far. And all of this is because they had a Citrix server. This isn't even like there's no CVE for this vulnerability. This is not a 0-day. This is not an advanced attacker. This is not anything except not doing the basic hygienes or protocols for putting a system on the internet. So leaked credentials, multi-factor, Citrix on the internet. No CVE here. So it really, what ticked me off, back to the point of this conversation, what ticked me off was that notice last week that says like, what happened? A cyber criminal gained unauthorized access to the system. Well, there's a lot of the word cyber, there's a lot of the word criminal. Um, they're going to offer 2 years of monitoring. Shocker. They're going to offer, a statement that says security and privacy are very important to us and that they care. And oh yeah, the word criminal and the word attack were in there peppered in. But this is like, at what point can we stop calling these things attacks and criminal activity? I mean, yes, it was illegal to log into someone else's computer, like not arguing that. But you're not, it's almost like jumping in the lake without a life vest on. Like if you, I mean, this is kind of dark. Like if you get hurt and you don't have a life vest on, the pity's a little different, right? Than if someone jumped in and did all the right protocols and stuff. And I feel like this is very similar where we need to stop somehow, I don't know how, because I know it's a PR statement, it's written by lawyers, it's purposefully written, and it accomplished the goal of what it was written for, which is to reduce the optics of the impact that the company's decision making had on this event. But at least for accountability, there has to be more of a impetus on calling it what it is, which is we did not do the very basics, and now we're out $1 billion. I mean, I wonder, do they have cyber insurance? Probably, I don't know. But like someone's out $1 billion. A third of Americans now have to have, more credit monitoring just added on to move it from last year, I guess. Like I wish they would start like running uh uh in a chain instead of parallel. But anyway. Um and then to read their statement that just makes it so passive, like someone did this thing to us, just really pissed me off because it was so avoidable, and
So,
I don't
so
like it.
this is a great question though, because like, and we in our pre-show yesterday,
Yeah,
we touched on this a little bit. So divide by null. Thank you. If they paid a ransom, why is there still an impact?
I don't know. My assumption is the impacts right now are the backlog more than the present tense, because they were down for fully down a month, partially down 2 months. So I think they're still just working through the backlog, and then of course from this is going to come fraud. Like every time there's a thing with a bunch of money involved, there's fraud, right? Like people are going to submit double claims on purpose and on accident. So like there's going to be, in 2 years we're going to be reading about like 65 whatever, 65 doctors indicted on fraud for double filing. Like, it's predictable. It happens every time, whatever. Um but to just roll over and play such a victim on something so egregious really, really pissed me off.
Himage, I know you said something in, like, I totally missed it what you said in the Slack, because you reacted to this as well too. I think it was more humorous than outrage though.
Humor is my coping mechanism because this really is heartbreaking. But I said something along the lines of like, I think reading this breach notice pissed me off beyond repair, especially seeing the credit monitoring statement, the 2 years of free credit monitoring. That's literally center of the bingo board on every breach notice. Like that's a sentence I see over and over again. And to me, so like the absolute stupidity of the technical details of like how the attack happened aside, um, why is it taking so long to do like isn't the law like 60 days? Where what, like 4 months and counting to notify patients of breach? And what got me about some of the wording too was that they mentioned that they would be mailing physical letters beginning in late July.
Oh, I thought, okay. I saw
Yeah,
something
no,
that said like June 24th was some
no,
kind of
it's like, yeah,
date.
it's like late July that they're going to start, and the physical letters is a HIPAA mandate, so that's why they're sending physical things and not other things.
So I don't know how much
And
100 million stamps is expensive. I mean, I
Get the
know they
bulk
get a
rate. You get
discount.
a bulk rate. You get a bulk rate when
Great.
they're
Yeah,
purchasing
yeah, they
things.
can get the junk mail rate. Like go on, yeah,
Add it
sure.
on their bill.
Like
how does
so
that work for people who don't have physical addresses? I'm sure there are unhoused people who are affected by this.
So I feel like there's a whole so this actually makes me think too, and we kind of touched on this, I think, in the pre-show meeting yesterday. But like this impacts a third of people in the United States, presumably some of whom won't be able to receive those letters, right? Because they don't have an address, they don't have a mailing address, which is a whole other thing.
you can't
But
monitor your credit if you don't have access to the internet, or you can't
right,
monitor your identity, your health, like all of so even if you've got the letter as
right.
unhoused or whatever, you still can't. Sorry to
If
interrupt.
you don't have no, that's a great point though. Like if you don't have a reliable connection, like are you somehow more susceptible to like actually having your identity stolen because you can't monitor for those things, right? Um, but one of the things that we were talking about yesterday that really has been kind of like turning over in my head a lot lately is, we talk so much about the free credit monitoring and like, oh, make sure you're not getting like, oh, make sure your stuff's not out there, all of that. And it's like, well, uh, I think the big thing is, right, like your information is out there now. Like I think we're living in an assume identity information is out there kind of world. I don't think we're still in the era of, oh, protect your credit card number, protect your SSN. Like no, I think now I would wager the vast majority of folks in the US, probably globally, but I'm going to go with the US, you have to change your threat model. It is not when your information gets leaked. Your information is out there. Now you have to
Mhm.
take steps to protect yourself and assume that it can be weaponized, which sounds really dark and kind of like, but I just think kind of this whole credit monitoring stuff is sort of BS that needs to go away. Like I don't think that's going to get people anywhere at this point. Like you can go on a forum right now. There's like Telegram groups where you can go and get like tons
Yeah.
of like they're so easy to come by. And so
We'll put those in the show notes for everybody if you want.
yeah, if anybody wants links to those. But like it almost at this point is starting to feel a little tone deaf to me. Like Himija, like you were saying, like the credit monitoring, like this is kind of a joke. Like
We've moved.
you, no, go ahead. Sorry.
We've moved from like, so put it in cybersecurity terms, like we were, for, 2010, I don't know, a while ago, it was all about like intrusion prevention systems, prevention. If you prevent it, you don't have to detect it. So credit monitoring, like, or the mindset of most Americans, which makes sense because credit cards are, I mean, I'm not gonna say new, but like whatever, like it was a technology that came into the previous generation, et cetera. But it's about like, oh yeah, protect this, don't let anyone see it, whatever. Well, we have to move way past that. It's about detection and response. It's going to happen. It has happened. All you can do now is like credit monitoring. It should be a utility provided by, like, it should be part of living. Like I do think that between all the breaches, and then also it seems like every service that you do, comes like free credit monitoring. So like, I think everyone probably has a zillion of them. So yeah, like that means nothing. Like I don't want more credit monitoring. I will pay for my own credit monitoring if I need to. I don't actually mind that if it's good. What I need is for you to pre-plan and say, if we had a breach, it's going to cost us $1 billion. So therefore, we should spend $1 billion on capital enhancements or resourcing or auditing or repeatable processes to find vulnerable assets, whatever. We have to, and this kind of, we talked about this. I don't know if we're going to go here today, but kind of transitions to like, we need to change the algorithm of these business decisions
Yeah.
that lead organizations to make this decision. So the decision that they make is a business decision to say, we're going to it's cheaper for us to get insurance and cross that bridge when we get there than it is to do the work.
Yeah. So
And we have to change that.
so even if we don't get to the other segments, the two things I wanted to make sure we did include into this one, because this is sort of a different show than we've had previously, because we're delving back into the more policy and like softer side of this versus like, yes, just like add 2FA to your Citrix thing and put it behind 3 VPNs
Because it's so boring. This is such a boring breach story. I'm like, could it have been more interesting?
Oh
Like,
yeah.
this is so stupid.
Well,
Sorry.
but it is interesting, right? So I guess the two things are, do PII breaches, and you already touched on a little bit, but I want to ask it directly. Do PII breaches matter anymore? Like, do they matter anymore? And the second one is, and maybe this is specifically to Glenn, but everyone, feel free, especially folks in the audience, please chime in. What do you want to have happen to change healthcare to make this not happen again? Because I have some answers depending on what you, or I have some rebuttals depending on what some answers are. But so the first one is, and take them in any order, take them both at the same time, whatever you want to do. Like, do PII breaches matter anymore? Should we care? Should it be a thing we have to care about and companies should care about, since all of our information's in the hands of every attacker that's out there right now? And the second one is, what do you want to have happen to try to prevent this? Because obviously nothing's worked so far.
So does it matter anymore? I mean, no.
Wait. No, hold on. I want, actually, you
You
all
said
didn't.
Glenn.
No, I didn't. I did. Well, no, for one of them, yes. But Himija
Oh,
didn't talk last week because she wasn't here, and you didn't let her talk
go
the week that
Himija.
you were hosting. So I would like Himija to
Yeah,
answer first, if
go
possible.
get it.
I don't know how many intelligent things I can say about this, but this makes me think of how anytime I talk to one of my friends who is not in security, they are almost always like, who needs it? Everyone already has all my data, like it's hopeless. They've got everything, right? Especially Move It. Like I think a lot of individuals were affected by Move It. And I still don't have a good answer for them, you know? I feel like maybe we change the way that maybe we change our PII systems to just, again, like not the when, not if, and just like assume breach. Okay, so then what do you do? What are the steps you take to protect your identity? Because it's still not an easy process, right, to recover from something like this. So maybe we just focus on that instead of prevention. But yeah, it's
kind of an interesting generational thing I've noticed as well, because I feel like folks who are who are a little younger kind of have that mindset of it's already out there, like whatever, like I just have to assume that that's the case. Whereas I have family members who are older who can't fathom. They're like so worried. well, a scammer called me and I accidentally gave some personal information to them over the phone. It's like, well, don't worry, they already have it. They're just verifying it. Like, that's not the thing you need to be concerned about. I would say older like my parents' age, right? So folks who are in that generation, right? I think it's just a different mindset, right? Because for so many years we kind of pounded into people, hey, you have to protect this, you have to protect it, defend it. Don't tell anyone your social security number. And it's like now, like you know, um, and so I think there's that too. There are those differences in different audiences and how we talk to them.
Can I go now? Okay, great. Thanks. So does it matter? I would say, and there's some good points in the chat. Does it matter as far as impacting, like I assume I'm in there. Like, is it going to affect my risk of identity theft and all that? I think no, because all of that is available everywhere. Is it, but does it matter as far as, which is a good point in the chat, as far as like giving folks, consumers, awareness of security practices and postures of an organization? Yes. I have purposely left, like quit doing business with a company or started doing business with a different company or whatever, just because of their security breaches. Like, I mean, I'm sure that taught them a lesson that they'll never forget, right? But it made me feel better. So like, kind of voting with your dollar or whatever. So, you know, it can affect consumer decision making, and but I think what it should do is impact. So the breach notifications, like, yes, we need to be told. They become such a story that it's numb. Everyone's able to blend in and say, we were a victim, even though that's not fully true. And we've seen where we talked about this before, I think, on the show, but where of late, last couple of years, there's a lot more breach notifications, or at least early notifications that are saying, nation state or cyber actor or threat actor. Like, they're basically quickly pointing to the third party, like, oh, it's Snowflake. Like, look, I mean, we're not even talking about Snowflake today, but like, Snowflake is just a deluge of victims rolling out from, right? So everyone
A
likes to
snowstorm.
just say,
It,
oh, a
it
blizzard.
is that the French pronunciation?
Who, what did you,
Deluge. Is the phrase the French pronunciation?
can I just have my rant?
Okay. All right.
What? I'm from East Texas. I say a lot of things wrong. Well, education was not.
There is no
Anyway,
wrong. If you're communicating your point, there is no wrong.
now I'm curious what I said and what is it? Anyway, um, so yeah, like, so look at Snow. So like, it's good for consumer awareness, but you broke up my point. What I want to see. One, how the frick is there one organization that processes 1/3 of medical claims for the US? Like, talk about too big to fail, and um, whatever other, automotive and bank bailout comparisons we want to make. But holy crap, like, we can't we can't have universal healthcare, but we can have universal insurance process claims. Like, it's just, come on. Like, so it needs to be like, what, Bob? You have a face.
Yeah. So, all right. At one point, United Healthcare has a couple of other subsidiaries that also do these things. So that there is one overarching organization that
Yeah,
probably has close
yeah,
to half.
yeah.
Just just to make you a little, I really want to see you turn into the help side legal angry. And then, like, so the second one is, what do you want to have happen? So what do you want like, so we have, like, HIPAA is a thing, and HIPAA fines happen
Yeah.
all the time. People can go to the site, check it out. And, like, do you want Change Healthcare to be fined into non-existence so that we no longer have someone processing claim data for people? And, like, how'd that work? Like, I don't know what you want to have happen.
So two sides. I have the two angels or whatever on my shoulder, the devil and the angel. Would I love to see it blown to smithereens? Of course. Like, yeah, that just feels nice and vengeful, but that's not practical, and that's not really helpful to, like, the overall healthcare system. We need to change. The U.S. laws, regulations, HIPAA, medical, like all of these things, need to again, kind of what I was saying earlier. We have to change the algorithm that companies use to make these risk-based decisions. Because, say it again, like all of these are business decisions. Every decision that leads to it before a breach is a business decision, and they're made usually based on financial cost, your risk model, your risk tolerance. So we need to change that algorithm. We need to have, what are the fines up front whenever you have a breach of this magnitude? You know that this is the minimum, right? Like it's like like for a jail sentence, like, it's 1 to 20 years in jail. Well, in theory, then you're going to serve at least a year in jail, right? So, especially when it comes to ransomware, talk about, sometimes you have to pay their, often you have to pay the ransom. That's the better thing for the organization. That's the better thing for maybe to
Is
keep
it?
something operational.
Yeah, this I
Well,
feel like could be a
so
whole other discussion
yeah,
because
yeah,
oh
no,
boy.
that's fine. So, I mean, I say this loosely, like I don't like, of course, I don't want anyone to pay the ransom, but if the options are, a company goes out of business that supports, 3 million households, or we pay the ransom, the economic impact, the overall impact is generally better to pay the ransom to keep this supply chain going. However, then, but before they pay that ransom, which means before they make the decisions that lead to them getting ransom and not implementing certain security controls that could have prevented it, they need to know that, like, if we pay a ransom, we get this fine, we get this kind of oversight, we get this kind of, whatever, and therefore changing the algorithm of how they make these decisions.
Do you think the people that so I one challenge I want to make. So it's probably more than one, but I'll do one. Do you think anybody in the organization with of any import knew that the Citrix server was on the internet with username and password authentication only? Of any
I
of
mean,
any of any import that would have immediately said, "What the bleep are you doing with
so,
this? Get this off the internet."
so does it matter if they knew
Yeah,
or they didn't
Well,
know?
yeah, it
yes,
does.
because that's part of the problem.
No, no. So, well, what I mean by that is, if they did know, that's really bad. And if they didn't know, that's really bad too, because they're not doing vulnerability or like scanning and monitoring
But I think
their
both of those things matter, right? Like if they did
yeah, they
know and
both
didn't do
matter.
anything about it, where is the education gap or the training gap or the hey, we need to make sure folks know how
Yeah.
to like choose the secure default versus we don't even know what's in our own sort of like attack surface. That's also
Yes.
a problem.
Yeah, I agree they both matter, but does it matter as far as outcome? Like both were egregious.
But I guess where I'm going is like you say it's a business decision, but I'm arguing that this wasn't a business decision. This was somebody put a Citrix server on the internet within this organization.
W- There were just okay, so then we have decisions to not do external monitoring or scanning of your network, because that, that costs money. Or we have business decisions to not like do them as often because, it costs money, or to review them because that costs an FTE. Um, they it, so even if someone didn't know that, server A is just sitting there waiting for someone to reuse a password and log in. By the way, also that's another thing. Uh, reuse password is a credential leak. So um, they may not have known about server 1, 2, 3, 4, but there were decisions made to not know, to not be able to know. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does, and so I want to extend what you were saying and maybe like shift route it into one direction based upon another great like as I said on the socials today, we literally have like the best audience members, and
Hmm.
the breaches will continue until security posture becomes a boardroom decision. The problem with that is it has been a boardroom decision since
Yeah.
I want to say 6 or 7 years ago when the SEC made it one, and they forced boards to care about these things, and boards have been asking a lot of questions over the past n years. But there's also reason why we now have a specific form filing on AK, like a specific
Okay. Hmm.
subparagraph filing on Form AKs so that people can be so that these public companies can be notified when breaches, or can notify the public and their investors when some material thing happens within the organization, which
I
means
mean,
material things happen in the organization.
let's start with, hey, if you leak 100 million, if you cause 100 million people to have, a data breach of some sort, maybe you don't get your bonus. Let's start with that and see what happens, right? Like, that'd go a long way. The companies that have that much data, the top makes so much money. And we're not going to turn this into a CEO like pay discussion, but okay, so then you don't get your bonus. The C levels don't get a bonus if there's a major breach. Now, where this gets complicated, and I'll admit before like the comments come in on this, is there is a difference in having, a firewall that's exploited by an ODay that leads to a breach. Like if it's a true ODay, then okay, then we're much more flexible. We can be like, yeah, like this was an advanced attack. This was a thing. This was
But
targeted,
how do
whatever.
you write that into legislate? Like, how do you differ? I
Oh, I don't
understand what you're saying, but like, how do we?
Yeah,
Right,
you have to build the tier, the
the tier
degrees of
list.
felony. Yeah. So I recognize that that's a variable in this, and that's what makes this one, like, this is what made me like just drive off a cliff on this one, is because you can't even point to the CVE that caused this breach, because there's not one, because it wasn't a vulnerability in the
No,
product.
it was negligence. It
It was
was
negligence.
not.
And maybe that's the line, right? If you can have like proof of negligence that leads to a breach, then you are just like, I don't know. You pay in many ways for many years. Treat it like insider trading, treat it like these financial crimes. Why y'all are y'all are just trying to keep me going. I'm
No,
done.
I'm gonna, since not everyone's gonna go back and read all the transcripts of everything. I mean, we could probably get the Linux folks to do a CV for this if you want, Glenn. I think they'd be glad to do that for you.
No, I don't want a CVE for this. I want people to make better choices. Like, there is someone that knew. Oh no. Okay,
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
anyway. That's
Glenn
a
is
callback to
essentially,
something else.
yeah. Glenn is essentially saying we all need to band together for a giant class action lawsuit to make some law firm a lot of money while we get
So we
like
can get
$4. Yeah,
$6.50.
yeah,
Like, that's not, I don't want
That
six
would
dollars and
stick
fifty
it to
cents.
him.
yeah. So
I
so and
want change. I'm
okay.
running for president.
Do you want change?
Yeah, I don't think you want
Okay.
change. Like, you hate change. You just said you hate change. So yeah. Um, so as I said, like, we're not going to get to tool time. Grab the show notes. Tool times. There's a great new open source tool. Open source service to help us. There's a great new service to help open source projects be really safe. It's really cool. Just check it out. That's a really good one on there. We're not done yet. The one reason why I wanted to facilitate an extended discussion on this one is, like, I wanted all the folks that listen, especially some of the more junior folks just coming up in the industry, to realize this isn't a technology problem. And like, I try never to use the word security anymore. I teach a bunch of CISOs every quarter to not use the word security anymore. Because we need to make it security and resilience. It is not a technology problem anymore. It is one. Glenn's rant, which was a very good rant, multiple ones actually during this thing, was great. It proves it's not. This is a fundamental breakdown in how we deliver software and services and whatever to the general public out there, and there's no accountability at levels that need to be this is where we actually need a societal change for this. I hate using that word now because of the stupid healthcare thing, but we actually need that. And so before we leave folks in despair, because that's what we're leaving folks right now if we don't actually have some uplifting so I'm giving you guys time to think some uplifting things. What can we suggest that the folks listening to this podcast, watching this blogcast, whatever they're called these days, do? Like, is there something tangible that they can walk away with? And I don't mean pick up a configuration sheet and make better stuff or whatever. Like, what can folks that are listening to this do to begin to affect some kind of better outcome with regard to these types of things in their organizations?
No, okay. I didn't want to go first. I'd get yelled at again. So I would bet that there were one or more people that knew that that Citrix server was there, right? And they probably raised the flag. And then it was, like we're giving assumptions here, but the old if you see something, say something goes a long way. Keep pressuring, if you're seeing something that's egregious like this in your organization, and your organization is regulated heavily, especially like healthcare or critical infrastructure or um, finance, whatever, there are like authorities or whatever that you can reach out to, right? Like it, I don't know what would happen, but what I mean to say is like, just don't sit on it and do nothing about it. Like
Okay, so
talk about it,
before
share.
before the two people that are smarter than us go, the so can I sum your thing sum up what you just said as so I do I mean it's a little like Orwellian, but if you see something, say something is pretty good.
Yeah.
But if change does not happen within the organization and you believe the thing is egregious enough,
Yeah.
you're also suggesting that at least in countries where there are whistleblower protection laws,
Mhm.
perhaps go that route.
I say yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure that because like those are two concrete things that
Yeah.
I do think are fairly logical and interesting
Unless
things
you
for folks to
work
consider
for
doing.
a plane
Yeah,
company.
if you work for Boeing, don't do this. But
Okay, how
otherwise,
was
it's
it
probably okay.
gonna be that direct?
I'll do it. I'll do it. It's fine. All right. So I want to give the other two smart people time to talk.
Odds last Stormwatch right now.
I mean, I don't know what else to say besides MFA. This is the second big story in recent weeks where MFA, period.
Quit giving away credit monitoring and give away free MFA.
So I actually kind of want to go back to something, Bob, that you said right before we kind of were wrapping up into this closing discussion. Um, you know, I think kind of talking to folks who are like starting in the field or who are really interested in getting into this and want to do good work here. Um, Something you said I think is very true. Like this is not a technology problem. Security, safety, trust and safety, they have never really been like technology problems, right? Like they have always been and will continue to be people problems. And I think if you as a practitioner at your organization, if you're responsible for IT security or any component of security at an organization, whether you are a huge, a Fortune 100 or whether you are in a highly regulated industry otherwise, find ways to make the secure path the easy path. Do whatever you can to help facilitate that because they think I'm not saying that that's like the be all end all here, but I just think so often we talk about these things in isolation and we talk about the technical details of a CVE or implementation or all of this. It's like, well, somebody stood the thing up, somebody put the thing on the internet. How do we fix that path? What can we do to change that kind of action? And I don't know. I think the larger picture of just like these are people problems. Security is a UX problem. It's a people problem. And I think we can't forget that.
So much is UX. It's like that's a whole topic, that's a whole discipline, I'm sure. How many, configuration and tech issues are really caused by bad UX, which is again comes back to a people problem. Um, and another thought is if CISOs can go to jail now, what why not for something egregious like this? Right? Like I'm not saying that's the right decision, but it just feels like we're pulling on we care more. This is not news to anyone. We care more about, if you steal or lose a bunch of money than if you cause 100 million victims.
That's a great point.
We
Like, when should this
yeah.
be a company ending event
Yeah,
versus a bailout?
yeah, right. Because I mean, so on this, like the government was helping fund some of the payments during the so they still had some sort of bailout, and then I don't know. I'm gonna rant. Like then I'm sure they're gonna get a tax break on somehow this was cost of
We
business. So there's
we
gonna be a
were
tax
we were we
break-in.
were we were trying to leave this on a positive, upbeat note to keep everyone toothly.
And then they'll get their bonus, and then
So I am gonna take it back to that, and I'll go. So I'll go with Glenn's first. See something, say something. That's down to the individual practitioner level outside of security who gets told to deploy a Citrix box without multi-factor authentication. And if that doesn't work, whistleblow unless you work for a giant airplane manufacturer. That ties into what Hima just said. I don't disagree that there's a somewhat technology solution with MFA that if done right everywhere and mandated to be done everywhere and given a time frame to be done in, et cetera, could help a lot with that too. So maybe there is a little bit of a tech thing that we can do. And I thought what Emily said was also really like profound, that we have to solve this at every single level. It isn't just what we were just talking about there and just individual actions. Like it's a complete mindset and a whole UX change of how we actually deploy the systems and services. So it's big, broad problems. Lots of places where people can go in, and if you're in a place in security, because most everyone listening to this is in security. So if you're in there and like you're tucked away in some little technical position, you care, then we've lit a little bit of a passionate torch for you in this one. Perhaps think about getting out of that technical position or taking like the chops that you have there and bringing up a bunch of levels to try to affect this kind of change in different parts of the organization. Because while we do need the bits and bytes, we also need the words, the paragraphs, and the rethinking of how we actually solve these technical problems in organizations. Cool.
incentivize making good choices is what it
Yeah.
comes down to.
And
Positive rewards for positive behavior.
there we go. And so we will leave it at that, Glenn.
It's like gentle
And
parenting.
yeah, gentle parenting. This is a good approach to doing these things. So, as expected, this now went longer than, well, actually, it wasn't. This went longer than I thought it was going to go, but that's all because Juniper decided to be crazy, and so now we did that. But thank you all for coming on the show again with us today. Apologies, Overwatch, again for not getting to the question at the beginning. Remember, we are off, so the three of you should not like join the links next week or the week after, because we're not doing this. So don't do that. And everyone else, look for the back catalog. Although I might try to toss in an AI driven episode in the next week or two, just for some fun, to see what's going out there. And with that, folks, that's all the noise we have time for today. Remember, in the world of cybersecurity, we're all just packets trying not to get dropped. So until next time, keep your firewalls high and your latency low. This is the Stormwatch crew signing off with a final reminder. Even though your antivirus definitions are up to date, this podcast is terminated, terminated, terminated. Stay gray out there, and may the hash always be in your favor. Take care, everybody.